Okay, so now we're going to talk about getting into the 12 tribes of Israel. In Genesis 21:2, we see that Sarah becomes pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. At the very time God had promised him, Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. Isaac grew and was weaned. And on that day, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son, Ishmael, whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham, was mocking. And she said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." And of course, if you read the whole account, I couldn't put the whole thing on. Abraham didn't want to do it. Abraham loved Ishmael, and but at the very beginning, when they named Ishmael, it said he would be a wild donkey. So he was probably somewhat of a problem child. If any of you had those strong-willed problem kids, you know what that's like. And then of course we see here that Ishmael was 13 years older. And he could have been a danger to Isaac. And I think maybe that's what Sarah was most concerned about, but maybe not. Maybe she just didn't want him to have any part of Abraham's inheritance. I don't know really what Sarah's heart was, but it says here that she wanted to get rid means to send him away. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed about the boy." He was about 13 years old at this time. What happens when children turn 12 and 13? They're considered to be adults, okay?
Adults.
Spiritually adults, at least. And so he was not, when it says a boy, we consider boys like, under the age of 10, are boys. But he was 13. And anyway, so Abraham listened to Sarah. God told Abraham to listen to Sarah, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. So, the Arab nation claims to be, and the Muslims claim to be, from Ishmael. And they actually believe that Ishmael, being the firstborn, was the chosen one of God. But I've read the accounts that the Arab nation probably did not really come through Ishmael, but that's what they believe. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Don't be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by a hand, for I will make him into a great nation." So God took care of Ishmael and Hagar and made them into a great nation also, and very well could be. And that's some of the problems. They say that in the promised land right now are the two brothers basically fighting against one another for the firstborn status, because the firstborn got all the rights. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here am I," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son." Now, the only one he had now was Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. Now, why did he take two servants? Well, the Bible says that two shall bear witness. In other words, you cannot confirm a matter unless there are two witnesses. So he had to have taken two of his servants, because they were witness to the fact that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and that Isaac came back alive. So they were the two witnesses, and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. And of course, we know the number three in the story of Yeshua is important because the third day. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife as the two of them went on together. So Isaac was carrying his own wood for the sacrifice, and then Abraham was carrying the fire and the knife. Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Now, at this time, Isaac was 13. So Isaac was about 13. Well, some people say he might have been 30 because that's when Yeshua, of course, was the firstborn that was slain. But he was older. He was not a little boy. So we know that Isaac knew what was happening. Here we see that Isaac said, where's the sacrifice? And Isaac willingly let Abraham bind him. And he willingly got on the fire because Abraham couldn't have, he was an old man. Remember, he didn't even have Isaac till he was, what, 90?
100, yeah.
Okay, so he was an old man. So we don't often think about the fact that this was not just the faith of Abraham, it was also the faith, I think, the faith of Isaac. I'm like, oh my word, Isaac had great faith to be able to do that and trust God. See, there was something else I was going to say. Yeah, anyway, I'll probably think of it later. All right, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here am I," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." So here's Isaac. I love this picture. Here's Isaac. He willingly laid down. He could have gotten up. He could have walked away. He didn't. And then Abraham saw a ram caught in a thicket. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by his horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." For Messianic believers, the binding of Isaac is a perfect picture of what God would do to his only son in order to take away the sins of the world. And we know that when Yeshua comes again, the ram's horn will be blown to announce his coming to rescue us from the coming wrath of God. For Jews, the binding of Isaac is read at Rosh Hashanah because God sent a ram as a substitute for Isaac, so the ram's horn is blown in celebration. And of course, Yeshua died probably in that exact same spot. Now, they believe that the Holy of Holies is basically where the rock was. And so, and right now, the rock or the pad where Isaac and Abraham were is supposedly underneath the dome of the rock. But that's all speculation. So we just know that Yeshua was sacrificed the same place on the same mountain, the Mount Moriah, that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. Now, today we call it the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, this exact same spot. Like I said, the rock or the altar, the rock that supposedly, now remember that the Muslims believe that Abraham sacrificed Ishmael in that place. So, but the thing is, it's not really one of their holy places. They just made it a holy place when they realized the Jews wanted it. And So, they didn't want the Jews to have anything. So they've made it, quote, one of their holy places. But really, it's not even a holy place because of Abraham sacrificing Ishmael. It's a holy place for them because that's where Muhammad flew some horse to Jerusalem and then went to heaven on a horse from the Temple Mount. So, they say all kinds of things, but I don't know, what they really believe. But the temple in Jerusalem is very important. It was here that God would place his name. He would establish his kingdom in Jerusalem. They say the mountains around the Temple Mount actually form the letter Sheen. Remember the Sheen that I showed you on the mezuzah? So the Sheen means Shaddai, God provides. First Chronicles 22:1 says, then David said, the house of the Lord is to be here, and also the altar of burnt offering for Israel. David said, my son Solomon is young and inexperienced in the house. David said, my son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house to be built for the Lord should be of great magnitude and fame and splendor in the sight of all nations. Therefore, I will make preparations for it. So David made extensive preparations before his death. And when we get to the Davidic covenant, we will talk more about David and Solomon. After the 1,000 years, there will be a new heaven and a new earth, but Jerusalem will continue to be a major part. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Mosaic covenant. And in this time period, we're going to talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, Joseph, which was Messiah ben Joseph, the Exodus, the golden calf, which is really important, and the 10 Commandments. In this time period, we see that the people in the nation of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have so much to learn. God is now writing what he wants from them down and calling for a commitment to follow his ways. God is separating them from the rest of humanity for a special purpose and technical instructions. So up until this point, nothing has really been written down. Remember before Noah, they knew each other. They almost knew all the way back to Adam. So they kept just telling everybody, so it was just told. It was mouth to mouth. And then a lot of it was lost in the next time period because it wasn't written down. So now the humanities are getting a little older now to where they can read and comprehend. So this is where the time period we're going to get into. And remember, we've already talked about Abraham and Isaac. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. It's interesting how a lot of these women had a hard time having children. The Lord answered his prayers, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." The boys grew up. Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Now, although Jacob used his brother's weakness, Esau could have said to himself, I will trust in God to provide and not give up what I've been given. So, as far as commitment to God and trust in God, even though Esau was famished, he probably wouldn't have died. Okay. He was just really, really hungry. He wasn't really that committed to his birthright. I guess he thought in his mind, I'm going to get the birthright no matter what. Doesn't really matter. I can tell Jacob anything I want to tell. I don't know. But Jacob, we call Jacob the trickster. Okay. So he kind of tricked Esau. And I'm not going to go into the story about how Jacob got the blessing from his father and all that, because you guys kind of know the story, and we're just kind of hitting the highlights going through the Bible. And so we're trying to get to the 12 tribes. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of eastern people. So after Jacob tricked Esau, they had to separate because Esau was going to kill him. So he ran on the run. So he went to the land of eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. Then Jacob asked Laban, Is he well? Yes, he is, they said, and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. It was love at first sight, and Jacob kissed Rachel. I don't know if that was exactly kosher to kiss someone on the when they first met him, but okay, that's what it says.
Kosher is not instilled yet.
You know, I copy verbatim scriptures out of the, I'm not really making any of this up. So that kind of surprised me too. Now, he kissed her right away. Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. So when it says weak eyes, we don't really know what that means. Some people think that most of the women had brown eyes, brown hair, brown eyes. And when it says weak eyes, maybe she had hazel eyes, or maybe she had blue eyes, or maybe her eyes were a different color, or I don't know, maybe she was cross-eyed. I don't know. But she wasn't as pretty. Let's just say she wasn't as pretty as Rachel, according to Jacob. I mean, she may have been very beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his great love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife. My time is completed. I want to make love to her. So Laban brought together all the people of the palace and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. So Laban tricked Jacob. So somehow, I don't know how their weddings worked, but I guess she left her veil on the whole time. Or they got drunk at the wedding and he didn't realize who was sitting next to him. Or, it could have been like an Orthodox wedding where all the men were in one spot and the women are in the other spot. And then they just come together in the marriage tent. And so the trickster, Jacob, who tricked his brother Esau, was tricked by Laban to marry Leah instead of Rachel. And then he also gave Leah, basically Zilpah. Uh, so it's sort of like an attendant, but it was sort of like they had more wives. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. So how to cheat a cheater? That's basically the Jacob story. It says, when morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, Didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish the daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work." So he had worked 7 years. He got Leah. They had to go through the week of the marriage ceremony. And then he was given Rachel. And then he had to work another 7 years. So it wasn't like he had to wait 7 more years to marry Rachel, but he had to work 7 more years. God wanted a bride who loved him. Yet God first took Israel as his bride, then paid the price to also redeem those that truly love him. So it was sort of a picture of God, and he had two wives, the God of Israel, the Israelites, the Hebrew people, and then he is the bridegroom of all those who believe in him. And those who believe in him are most beloved because they also believe. They also love him. And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. I just can't even fathom being in a plural marriage, much less being in a plural marriage where I knew that I wasn't loved.
Yeah.
All right, so
Sue, could that be symbolic? I'm sorry. Could
yeah,
I ask a question? Could Leah and Rachel be symbolic of Jews and Gentiles?
I don't, like I said, I don't think it's Jews and Gentiles. I think it's the Hebrew people and all believers after Yeshua. So the Hebrew people, God loved them, but they strayed all the time. They weren't faithful. They weren't loyal. Now that's not Leah, but still, God he loves those who love him, I think, with an everlasting, more compassionate love. Because that's why God brought humanity in the world, because he wanted people to love him. And so people who willingly love him are more, I think, I hate to say more loved, but because love is love, but they're just special. The Hebrew people, they followed him and they loved him somewhat, but they didn't have the intimate relationship that those of us who are believers after Yeshua have. Does that make sense? We're able to have more of an intimate relationship than they did before Yeshua sent the Comforter, the Holy Spirit. Before we were able to get the Holy Spirit personally, their relationship was all through a corporate going to the tabernacle. So it was,
Sacrifice.
yeah, it was different. It was different. God loved both of us, but I just think that the love for those of us who love him also, willingly love him, and we're not, commanded to love him. I just think it's a difference, but I don't know. It definitely is a picture. All right, so Leah. Leah was the mother of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, the priest, Judah. That's where the tribe of David comes by. David, tribe of Judah. Jesus from the tribe of Judah. Issachar, Zebulun. Now, my daughter's name is Leah. And when I named her, my grandmother said, "Why are you naming her Leah? She was the ugly daughter. Why didn't you name her Rachel?" And I said, because it was through Leah that Jesus came through Leah. So anyway, she was special. God made her special. God loved her, and he blessed her. He blessed her even though she knew that her husband didn't love her as much as he loved Rachel. Now, Rachel, she had a hard time having kids too. Seems like all these women are having a hard time. But she finally had Joseph. He was one of the younger ones. And then a lot later than that, he had Benjamin, or she had Benjamin. So she had Joseph and Benjamin. Now, after Joseph went to Egypt and he had his own children, I'm not exactly sure why. I didn't really research this, but his children, Manasseh and Ephraim, they became a part of the tribes. And then the Levites and the priests were not considered one of the 12. So that would make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the priests became priests separate, and then the 12 tribes were considered Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, Leah's attendant was Zilpah, and she had Gad and Asher. And Rachel's Bilhah, she was the mother of Dan and Naphtali. So that gives us 12 different tribes. We're not really going to go into the like the ephod and what they're. I mean, we can really get specific, but here again, we're just going through specific, generally what's happening during these time periods. Genesis 32 says, so Jacob was alone the night before he was to see Esau. So now Jacob's going to go back and he's going to meet Esau. And Jacob really wants to make amends. He doesn't want to hate his brother. He doesn't want his brother to hate him. So he's going back and he's going to see his brother Esau. And a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Wrenched, I guess. It was wrenched. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. So, see if I can move this. Given the name of Israel, okay, so the name Israel means let God prevail, one who prevails with God, fighter of God, triumphant with God, God contended and wrestles with God. So who do you think basically he was wrestling with? Probably Yeshua. Yeshua.
Jesus.
Jesus. He's wrestling with Jesus. Jesus appears many times in the Old Testament if you really think about it. We're going to see him in Daniel. We're going to see him Abraham. Some people believe Melchizedek was a Yeshua incarnate. So we see him come temporarily, but when he comes, he may be in the form of a man, but he doesn't become fully man until he comes to Mary. So many believe that the man that Jacob wrestled was actually Yeshua. So I think we're going to stop here.